the persistent whisper understanding denialism. Denialism is like scammer on a global scale, and by the time the damage is done, the perpetrators are long gone to a private island with mercenaries. It's much more than simply disagreeing with an idea. It's an active rejection of facts, especially when those facts are well supported by evidence. Lies can temporarily deceive or manipulate people, making it seem like they win by controlling narratives and creating collateral out of the ones they are supposed to protect. The only thing that changes in this system is puppet masters and evolved lie. By centuries-long evolution of lies, we find ourselves in times of visible Dante circles around us, decorated with shiny lights and fake narrative of abundance. At its very core, denialism functions as a form of lying. It deliberately twists what is real. It casts a long shadow over clear understanding, creating a fog that clouds our collective judgment and perception of the world. Devil afraid of death in denialism, impersonating God in ego-tripper illusion, begging for a clap. In truth, it is just hysterical son, afraid of death or ungrateful for the size of something, reaching for a new destruction toy and calling it progress. Pulling generations and generations toward doom by lies masked as fancy words he invents. A lot of what we call society, culture, or even politics is built on narratives that often stretch, hide, or reshape the truth. Sometimes these are called perspectives, interpretations, or spin, but at their core is a lie. Selective truths, half-truths, straight-up lies. This shared denial helps to maintain old, familiar stories and existing power structures, and injustice thriving so the war can be fabricated at any time. It becomes a shared illusion, a comfortable falsehood that many prefer over a harsh, unsettling reality equals sign truth. This happens because different groups have conflicting interests. Power needs control over information. People want to protect their reputation or agenda. Another fancy terms for lying created from original lies evolve, and humanity is de-evolving. Facts grounded in clear evidence and transparent cause and effect relationships stand on their own, no matter what anyone says. Actions and outcomes are reality. Words are just tools we use to describe or communicate that reality. And the truth is always just one, like the planet Earth is one. Evidence, not perspective, of a vote you bought by manipulation, Loki dear. We see you. First sociopathic figure to claim the right to impersonate a higher power, and thereby begin the cycle of corruption and collapse are transparent in history. Their favorite tool of manipulation is money. Now we have evolution of it called as cryptocurrency. We have modern dealers of fake, plastic and virtual money and paper money and candlesticks. Symbols of truth. One life is greener on the account of the red one that will die suffering because of another hysterical son or brainwashed daughter in the death machine built with poison of lies in different form. Individuals and groups alike are often motivated to protect their reputations, no matter the cost, or they are driven to push their own specific agendas forward, demonic circles. The fact is, truth is undeniably present, like deterioration of humanity. Hysterical death, fearing liars masked in sociopathic behavior just have power over life in their minds, creating epic karmic consequences that they try to mask in denialism or perspective. We all know by now everything is energy, so the main question is why. The truth is simple. Humans need air, water, food, and love to live. The one who is not detached from his soul has the true power of making life longer by loving energy. If the male and female merge in this energy, this is what makes their lifetime longer. And this is what makes a hysterical, ungrateful son or a daughter run fast into Skeeter Davis, the end of the world mode. Mummy and daddy issues never addressed properly created a cycle of bad sex and profit on human souls normalized by money manipulation and weapons of destruction manipulation. Key pattern: claiming divine right to rule. Throughout ancient history, rulers consolidated power by declaring themselves gods, sons of gods, or divinely chosen. This wasn't spiritual humility. It was a calculated political move to control minds and bodies. They boldly claimed that gods, or the heavens themselves, had personally chosen them to rule. Ancient fathers of slavery and manipulation attached to shiny things and toys masked as progress. It was an incredibly powerful political maneuver. This strategy aimed to control not only what people did with their bodies, but, more importantly, what they believed in their minds. If a ruler was indeed selected by a divine entity, then any act of disobedience against that ruler was tantamount to disobeying the god itself. This idea created power circles of liars fueled with money corruption and evolution of daddy issues, and hating mummy for breaking the illusion with truth-telling. It cemented their authority in ways that armies and weapons alone could never fully achieve. This pervasive claim of divine right was fundamentally about achieving and maintaining total, unquestionable control, and separating soulmates with pure hearts wishing only love more and more, separated in the sea of strategy and target of lies, perspectives and fake progress toward cannibalism. We live in the now. The ruler's word was instantly transformed into sacred law. Their personal desires and ambitions were presented as the divine will of a higher power. This was a sophisticated way to make immense power seem entirely natural, utterly inevitable, and completely beyond any form of questioning or challenge. It effectively silenced dissent before it could even take root or find expression. After all, who would dare to openly question or defy a God's chosen representative actively ruling on earth? This tactic fostered a deep-seated sense of obedience, often intertwined with a palpable sense of fear among the populace. At the very heart of this ancient and enduring strategy lay a profound and fundamental untruth. It was the audacious lie that a mere human being could somehow act as a god or possess the unique ability to speak directly for the divine. This grand deception allowed rulers to dominate other people completely and without reservation. They could readily justify devastating wars, the brutal institution of slavery, and vast systemic inequality across their lands. All these actions, often causing immense suffering, were meticulously presented as integral parts of a preordained divine plan. The pain and hardship experienced by ordinary people were frequently dismissed as insignificant, when compared to the supposedly grand designs of the gods, as exclusively interpreted by their earthly rulers and denialism. This ancient power play, the assertion of rule by divine decree, set an extremely dangerous and lasting precedent for governance. It firmly established the idea of an authority that simply could not be challenged or held accountable. It created a hierarchical system where the ruler was positioned far above the common people, almost as if they were a different, superior kind of being. This concept of unshakable, divinely sanctioned power has reverberated throughout the long corridors of human history. It laid the essential groundwork for many subsequent forms of oppression and autocratic rule. The deeply problematic belief that some individuals are inherently born to rule, while others are destined only to obey, found its early roots here, with these ancient, powerful claims of heavenly endorsement. Ancient echoes, pharaohs, emperors, and heavenly mandates. Let us journey back to ancient Egypt, approximately around 3000 BCE. The pharaohs who ruled this ancient land made truly incredible and far-reaching claims about their status. They did not merely assert that they were chosen by the gods to govern. Instead, they boldly declared that they actual gods walking on earth. For instance, a reigning pharaoh was often perceived by his people as the living embodiment of Horus, a powerful and revered sky god manifested in human form. This profound belief was absolutely central to the functioning of Egyptian society. It served as the ultimate and unquestionable justification for their immense, almost limitless power. Religion was the primary instrument they skillfully wielded to maintain their dominion, and this exalted divine status was the unshakable cornerstone of their authority. This claim of divine status by the pharaohs had extremely serious and widespread consequences for the Egyptian people. It was systematically used to justify the practice of slavery on a truly massive and organized scale. Magnificent monuments, pyramids, and temples were painstakingly constructed by vast armies of forced laborers, all dedicated to the glory of the god-king. Wars were frequently fought in their sacred names, consistently presented to the populace as holy missions or divine crusades. Social and economic inequality was considered completely normal, even divinely ordained by the cosmic order. If an ordinary person dared to disobey the pharaoh, they were not merely breaking a temporal law. They were committing an act of blasphemy, a grievous sin against the gods themselves, inviting severe punishment. Other ancient rulers across different cultures and civilizations followed remarkably similar paths to power. In the fertile lands of Mesopotamia, the Sumerian and Akkadian kings, notable figures such as Sargon of Akkad, who reigned around 2300 BCE, also confidently claimed strong divine support for their rule. They publicly stated that powerful deities, such as the god Enlil or the goddess Ishtar, personally backed their reigns and conquests. These rulers strategically centralized their power and influence through the construction and control of temples. The pervasive fear of swift and terrible cosmic punishment from slighted gods effectively kept the general population in line and obedient to royal decrees. If the gods clearly favored the king, then opposing the king meant risking divine anger, which could bring disaster upon everyone. Further east, in ancient China, around 1000 BCE, emperors governed under the profound concept known as the mandate of heaven. They asserted that they ruled because heaven, a supreme and impersonal cosmic power, had specifically chosen them for this task. This divine mandate, however, was not permanent. It could theoretically be lost if a ruler became unjust, corrupt, or incompetent, often signaled by natural disasters or successful rebellions. Nevertheless, as long as an emperor was perceived to hold the mandate, any act of rebellion against him was viewed as a grave cosmic sin. Even the powerful Roman emperors, emerging much later in history, enthusiastically joined this long-standing tradition. Prominent figures like Augustus or the infamous Nero, ruling from the 1st century BCE to the 1st century CE, were officially declared divine or sons of gods. This was a calculated move to demand unwavering loyalty and to legitimize their vast imperial conquests across the known world. The mask of divinity, sociopathy in seats of power. When we carefully examine the historical accounts of these rulers who proclaimed divine status, a rather disturbing and recurrent pattern begins to emerge. Many of these powerful individuals exhibited traits that contemporary psychology might categorize as sociopathic. They often demonstrated a significant lack of genuine empathy or compassion for the very people they governed. Their primary, overriding concern frequently appeared to be their own personal power, their enduring glory, and the expansion of their legacies. Lying was not a moral failing for them, but rather a strategic tool employed skillfully and without remorse to manipulate entire populations. They meticulously presented themselves as acting under a sacred duty or divine calling. However, beneath this carefully constructed mask of divinity, there often lurked a cold, calculating, and ruthless ambition. Fear and religion were consistently their main instruments of societal control. These rulers understood, either intuitively or through observation, that human beings are often moved more profoundly by faith and fear than by pure reason or logic. By inextricably linking their rule to the divine, they could effectively tap into these powerful primal emotions within their subjects. Dissent under such regimes was not treated as mere political disagreement, it was reframed as a spiritual failing or a moral transgression. Those individuals who dared to question the ruler or his policies were frequently dehumanized. They were systematically branded as enemies of the gods, as dangerous heretics, or as agents of chaos and destruction. This public denigration made it significantly easier to justify their persecution, imprisonment, or even their elimination. These astute leaders cleverly and effectively fused spiritual authority with the coercive power of the state. This potent combination allowed them to define absolutely everything within their realms: morality, justice, and even the very nature of reality itself. What was deemed good was simply what served the ruler's interests or whims. What was considered just was whatever the ruler decreed it to be. The truth, in essence, became whatever the ruler proclaimed it was at any given moment. This created a closed, self-referential system where their power was absolute, unchallengeable, and seemingly divinely ordained. They became the ultimate arbiters of right and wrong, their pronouncements backed by the supposed and often terrifying might of heaven. This dangerous fusion of power and purported divinity inevitably created a terrible and repeating cycle. Power, once successfully masked as something sacred and untouchable, allowed corruption to flourish unchecked. If the ruler was indeed divine or divinely appointed, then their actions, no matter how corrupt, self-serving, or cruel, became inherently beyond reproach. Questioning these actions, or attempting to tell the truth about widespread abuses of power, became an act of heresy, punishable by severe means. This systemic rot often led to societies decaying from within, their foundations eroded by lies and fear. Eventually, such systems, precariously built on falsehoods and oppression, would often face internal decay or external collapse. The divine mandate would prove fragile when confronted with the harsh realities of human suffering and the unyielding quest for truth. Section 5. Weaving reality: how narrative control shapes worlds. The ancient and remarkably effective trick of rulers claiming divine right clearly demonstrates a fundamental truth about human societies. Controlling the dominant story is tantamount to controlling the people. Modern power, in its various forms, still operates extensively on this very principle. It may not always explicitly claim direct messages or mandates from gods or heavenly beings. However, it works tirelessly and often subtly to control the narratives that shape our understanding of the world. By carefully shaping the stories we hear, read, and see, power effectively molds our perception of reality. It profoundly influences what we believe to be true and how we consent to be governed. It essentially creates an illusion of reality that consistently serves its underlying interests, akin to building a vast psychological empire within our minds. In this ongoing modern game of narrative control, objective truth can often be rewritten or conveniently ignored. Uncomfortable facts that contradict the preferred story are frequently suppressed, dismissed, or twisted beyond recognition. Acts of oppression or injustice might be skillfully rebranded as necessary security measures or unavoidable sacrifices for the greater good. Human suffering can be coldly transformed into a mere statistic, an abstract policy tool, or even a new market opportunity for exploitation. The language used in these narratives is absolutely crucial. Words are chosen with extreme care to evoke specific emotions, to frame issues in a particular light, and to discourage critical thought or independent analysis. This is precisely how consent is often manufactured, leading people to support policies that may actually be against their own best interests if the story is compelling enough. What deep psychological drivers motivate those individuals who seek such comprehensive and total control over others? Often, it is a profound and gnawing fear that lies at the core of their ambition. This can be a fear of death and oblivion, a fear of perceived weakness or inadequacy, or a fear of ultimate insignificance in the grand sweep of history. They desperately try to outrun these existential fears by relentlessly accumulating power, wealth, and influence. They strive to build monumental legacies, to control others, and to impose their singular will upon the world. In this relentless quest for dominance, they may become tragically ungrateful for life itself, for the simple, intrinsic beauty of nature, or for genuine human connection. They effectively trade their inner peace, their conscience, their souls, for fleeting illusions of lasting power and worldly dominion. These powerful figures, obsessed with narrative control, can be likened to a twisted and corrupted version of a noble guardian or a benevolent leader. Imagine for a moment the familiar Lion King story, but in this version, the usurper seizes power not with any intention to protect the kingdom, but rather to exploit and ultimately destroy it for personal gain. They might cleverly employ the symbols and rhetoric of care, protection, and responsibility. However, their actual actions often sever the delicate circle of life. They ruthlessly exploit natural resources, deliberately sow division within communities, and systematically erode trust among people. They present themselves as caring shepherds of the flock, but their behavior is more akin to that of wolves in disguise, all while meticulously managing the public story to maintain their benevolent and righteous image. Section 6. The modern maze, denialism in the age of information. You know, the ancient practice of controlling narratives to maintain power is, well, demonstrably alive and well in our contemporary world. Today, we frequently encounter one of its most prominent forms, which we label denialism. This phenomenon is especially visible and impactful within our modern political landscapes. In what is often referred to as the age of information, one might reasonably expect that verifiable facts and empirical evidence would reign supreme. However, we consistently witness powerful and well-funded efforts to deny clear, established evidence on a wide range of issues. This is not a novel development in human affairs. It's simply the latest iteration of the age-old strategy of manipulating truth for the sake of power. The fundamental goal remains unchanged: to shape public belief and control societal outcomes, regardless of what is objectively real or true. So let's consider some recent events that illustrate this point. Following the United States elections in 2024, for instance, there were interesting developments. President-elect Donald Trump's decisive victory led to a generally smoother certification process in states like Arizona, as was officially noted on May 26, 2025. He made fewer claims of widespread voter fraud compared to previous cycles. Some commentators even optimistically declared that the age of election denialism was effectively over, but this optimistic assessment was not universally shared. Arizona's Attorney General Chris Mays pointed to ongoing legal challenges and disputes stemming from earlier elections, such as those in 2022, suggesting that the underlying issue of election denial was far from resolved. Old habits of doubt and suspicion, once sown, tend to die hard. Indeed, even with former President Trump himself not actively promoting claims of widespread fraud after his 2024 win, the phenomenon of election denialism persisted, driven by other public figures. In Wisconsin, a Republican candidate challenging for a U.S. Senate seat disseminated unsubstantiated rumors concerning absentee ballots in Milwaukee. In North Carolina, a prominent Republican state Senate leader publicly suggested that the vote-counting process for a crucial state Supreme Court seat was somehow rigged. These claims, often lacking credible evidence, can inflict serious damage on public trust in democratic institutions. The head of North Carolina's State Board of Elections issued a stern warning that such inflammatory comments could potentially incite violence, highlighting the dangerous real-world power of unfounded narratives. This persistent and often aggressive denialism has tangible and detrimental consequences. Reports indicate that sustained disinformation campaigns, particularly from some Republican quarters, have significantly weakened Americans' confidence in the integrity of their own electoral processes. Local election officials, the dedicated individuals who administer these elections, have faced a barrage of terrible threats, intimidation, and harassment. Shockingly, bomb threats were even directed at election offices in multiple states following the 2024 election. What is perhaps most concerning is when individuals who actively campaigned on platforms questioning local election integrity are subsequently elected to positions where they oversee those very elections, as was observed in Maricopa County, Arizona. This dangerous cycle of denying results, then gaining power, poses a serious and ongoing challenge to established democratic norms and societal stability. Section 7. When truth becomes heresy, the inversion of morality. A truly dangerous and insidious cycle often begins when power successfully masks itself as something sacred, infallible, or otherwise unquestionable. If a leader, an institution, or an ideology cannot be critically examined or challenged, then corruption has fertile ground to grow freely and without restraint. It becomes effectively untouchable, securely hidden behind a carefully maintained sacred veil of authority. In such a repressive system, the act of speaking the truth, of pointing out the pervasive corruption or abuses of power, becomes transformed into an act of heresy or treason. The truth teller is then systematically branded as a dangerous traitor, a disruptive fool, or an enemy of the people. This is how the very fabric of reality itself can be deliberately turned upside down by those who wield significant power. The concept of the Antichrist, as understood in some religious and cultural traditions, is not necessarily about a single, uniquely evil individual. It can also be interpreted as a pervasive system or a powerful ideology. It represents a system of lies that skillfully mimics divinity, goodness, and righteousness. This system seeks to replace the human soul, our innate conscience, with cold, calculating control and unquestioning obedience. It actively elevates ego, material wealth, and brute violence above compassion, empathy, and objective truth. This insidious system demands unwavering loyalty from its followers while simultaneously working to destroy the very conscience that makes us truly human. It is a master of moral inversion, consistently calling evil good and labeling good as evil to confuse and manipulate. We can observe distinct echoes of this profound moral inversion in many aspects of our modern world. Governments, large corporations, or other powerful institutions might publicly proclaim their commitment to noble values. They frequently speak of freedom, sustainability, equality, or justice. Yet their actual practices and policies might involve extensive mass surveillance, significant environmental destruction, or the systematic protection of the powerful at the direct expense of the vulnerable and marginalized. This disturbing disconnect often occurs when a society, or more specifically its leaders, begin to effectively kill their collective conscience. They cease to listen to that vital inner voice, that moral compass, which helps us distinguish between fundamental right and wrong. When rulers, ideologies, or powerful entities consistently place themselves above commonly accepted morality, above the guidance of conscience, or above basic universal human values, human history unequivocally shows us that mass suffering and widespread atrocities often follow. The pernicious idea of a self-proclaimed elite being inherently above others, ruling by some imagined natural right and defining morality solely by their own power and convenience is a dangerous and corrupting descendant of that ancient foundational lie. This is the lie that a mere human can successfully impersonate God or divine authority in order to dominate and exploit others. This corrupted belief system has repeatedly led humanity down dark and tragic paths where empathy is systematically extinguished and cruelty is rationalized and even celebrated. Section 8. Money, Power, and the Modern Divine Economic Control. In our highly interconnected modern world, one of the most potent and pervasive tools of control is unquestionably money. It often exerts its influence quietly, subtly, without the need for overt displays of violence or coercion. Individuals frequently find themselves willingly surrendering their personal freedom, their valuable time, or even their deeply held moral principles in pursuit of money. This pursuit helps to create and sustain a false or distorted value system within society. This system often prioritizes outward indicators of success, such as status, the accumulation of material possessions, and the endless quest for more wealth. In doing so, it effectively pushes aside deeper, more intrinsic human values like genuine connection to our inner selves or souls, the guidance of our conscience, the pursuit of truth, or the cultivation of love and compassion. For many, money effectively becomes the new, all-powerful God. Complex global financial systems can be, and often are, strategically used to exert widespread control over populations and even entire nations. Through sophisticated mechanisms such as the creation and manipulation of debt, the engineering of artificial scarcity, the management of inflation, and widespread financial speculation, entire populations can be effectively, if subtly, enslaved. The prevailing system can sometimes appear to actively reward corruption and unethical behavior. Unbridled greed might be skillfully rebranded as healthy ambition or entrepreneurial spirit. The ruthless exploitation of people or natural resources might be euphemistically termed economic efficiency. Those individuals who learn to play this intricate game well often accumulate vast fortunes and disproportionate influence. Conversely, those who cannot or ethically will not participate fully are frequently left behind, struggling to survive in a system that was not fundamentally designed for their well-being or benefit. Some contemporary thinkers and commentators interpret ancient warnings, such as the potent biblical symbolism of the mark of the beast found in the Book of Revelation, as a powerful metaphor for this very kind of pervasive economic control. This enigmatic mark could be seen to represent a comprehensive system that effectively forces individuals to submit to a dominant false power structure in order to participate in basic economic life, that is, to be able to buy or sell goods and services. This interpretation highlights the deep-seated anxieties many people feel about economic systems that seem to demand unquestioning conformity and consistently prioritize profit and accumulation over fundamental human dignity and well-being. The fear is of a world where economic survival necessitates a compromise of core values. This overarching system, sometimes referred to metaphorically as the insidious work of an antichrist figure or an analogous controlling force, skillfully manipulates money to reduce the multifaceted richness of human life to a mere tradable commodity. True, intrinsic wealth encompassing things like robust health, meaningful and fulfilling use of time, genuine love and relationships, and the pursuit of deep wisdom becomes systematically devalued or ignored. Instead, an individual's worth is increasingly measured by superficial metrics such as the digits in a bank account, the oppressive levels of personal or national debt, and the constant gnawing fear of not having enough material resources. Money, within this twisted and inverted system, tragically becomes a primary tool to dominate others, to create pervasive anxiety, and to fundamentally invert what truly matters for a flourishing human existence.
1, 2, 3.
Section 9. The unending battle reclaiming truth in a post-truth era. We are undeniably living in a profoundly challenging and often confusing time. It is frequently described by commentators and scholars as a post-truth era. In this environment, the task of distinguishing verifiable fact from carefully crafted fiction or objective reality from meticulously constructed narratives has become incredibly difficult for many people. The ancient insidious lie, the arrogant claim of absolute unquestionable authority, still echoes powerfully through our modern societies. It continues to shape our world in ways that are both subtle and overtly obvious. Rulers and powerful groups today no longer always need to explicitly claim divine selection or heavenly mandates. Instead, they skillfully manipulate information, exert control over media outlets, and cynically exploit our inherent cognitive biases to maintain their often precarious grip on power. In this complex and often bewildering contemporary environment, the importance of cultivating robust critical thinking skills cannot possibly be overstated. We must constantly and rigorously question the stories and narratives that we are told, regardless of their source. We need to actively seek out credible evidence, learn to evaluate sources for reliability and bias, and engage in thoughtful analysis. The easy answers, the comforting narratives that confirm our existing beliefs, are often the most misleading and ultimately the most dangerous. The ability to think for ourselves, to resist manipulation and propaganda, is a crucial skill not just for informed citizenship, but for basic survival in the modern, saturated information landscape. It stands as our primary defense against those who relentlessly wish to control our minds and actions. The historical legacy of rulers who did not believe in mental health and fathers of sociopathy of today claimed divine right to govern is a heavy and burdensome one for humanity. It effectively taught generations of people to accept power without question or accountability. It normalized the dangerous idea that some individuals are inherently superior to others and therefore possess the inherent right to dictate reality for everyone else. This deeply ingrained societal pattern continues to adversely affect our politics, our diverse cultures, and even our most personal interactions and relationships. We observe its influence in instances of blind obedience to authority figures, regardless of their actions. We see it in the widespread dismissal of uncomfortable truths that challenge our worldviews. We witness it in the alarming ease with which deliberate misinformation and disinformation can spread virally and take firm root in public consciousness. The ongoing battle for truth is therefore an unending and essential one. It requires constant vigilance, courage, and a commitment to intellectual honesty from all of us. We must consistently strive to hold power accountable, no matter what form it takes or what justifications it offers. We must champion transparency in governance and support those brave individuals and organizations that dare to speak truth to power, often at great personal risk. Reclaiming a shared understanding of reality, one that is firmly based on verifiable facts, empirical evidence, and genuine empathy, is absolutely essential for the creation and maintenance of a healthy, just, and functioning society. The ancient lies of domination, denial, and deception will always seek new forms and new avenues to proliferate. Our collective and individual task is to recognize them, to expose them for what they are, and to consciously choose a path forward that is based on honesty, shared human values, and mutual respect. Look for your soulmate and heal together so we can build systems with healthy roots and love that is the real mirror of divinity on planet Earth. Healthy seeds for future generations to thrive in freedom from slavery of the morally fallen ones.